Greetings, growers from around the world. Jordan River here, back with more Growcast. You can find me tending to the fish. Today we have the fish master himself. Steve Raisner is back on the line, Aquaponics, and he's here to talk about his new masterclass for aquaponics that he has coming up, as well as his work on his AI chatbot and so much more. A lot of good natural farming talk, a lot of good aquatic microbe talk. I always love sitting and rapping with Steve. Before we get into it, though, shout out to AC Infinity, baby. ACinfinity.com. Code GROWCAST15 to get your savings and keep the lights on here at Growcast. We appreciate your support, and we love AC Infinity. They make the best grow tents around, extra thick poles. They've got nice, durable, thick siding. Now they have the new side ports. People have been asking for those, and AC Infinity, listen. Plus, they've got everything else you need to grow. They've got lights and pots and fans, and their oscillating fans, the Cloud Ray system. Check out their humidifiers, the Cloud Forge. How nice is your humidifier? Maybe it's time to replace that. The Cloud Rays are my favorite oscillators on the market. And of course, their Cloud Line series, what they got it all started with. All those years ago when we were partners with AC Infinity, all they made were those inline fans, and they're the best in the game. So shout out to the entire AC Infinity suite. They've got everything you need to get growing, from fans to tents to lights. Code GROWCAST15 works at acinfinity.com. You support us, and you're getting some badass, durable grow gear while you're doing it. So thank you to all you listeners using code GROWCAST15, and thank you to AC Infinity. All right, let's get into it. Steve, thank you for listening, and enjoy the show. Hello, podcast listeners who are now listening to Growcast. I'm your host, Jordan River, and I want to thank you for tuning in again today. Before we get started, as always, I urge you to share this show. Turn someone who grows onto Growcast. It's the best thing that you can do to help us out. Or turn someone onto growing if they're a smoker. That's how you can help out the overall mission of Overgrow, and we love to see that. GrowcastPodcast.com for all the things, the seeds, the classes, the membership. Special thank you to all of the Growcast members. You make this possible, and I am grateful for you. Today, we've got a great friend of the show back on the line. It's been a minute. He's been on Growcast TV a few times. I popped in for a recent double feature, but it's been a second since we've had a one-on-one with the aquaponics expert, IPM expert, microbe expert, and so much more. Steve is here, Aquaponics on Instagram, from Growing with Fishes. You know him, you love him, and he joins us now. What's up, Steve? How are you doing, man?
Good, man. How's it going?
Yeah, doing good. Thank you for coming back on the show. I appreciate you making time. You've been a busy man. You've been working on consultations. You've been working on that AI, natural farming and IPM chatbot that you've been crafting. You've been working on a new aquaponics masterclass. Tell us what you've been up to, man.
Yeah, been really busy. So I have a bunch of projects going up this year. We have a project with one of the Native American tribes in Oklahoma. So that's coming along. We have we got a grant last year for a couple $100,000 to build out a pretty large greenhouse facility that they already have. The greenhouse is there, but it needs a little bit of TLC, and then we're going to put a big aquaponic system in it. So that'll be really cool to make a new education space for the tribe out there. Got a couple of other projects here and there with different cannabis facilities and aquaponics facilities around the country. So I've been working on that. We've been doing all kinds of different neat stuff. Been working really hard on this masterclass. So we have an aquaponic masterclass in May 22nd through 26th. It's in Beggs, Oklahoma. So that'll be in May. And that'll be 5 days intensive course. We'll have a lunch provided for everybody each day. And then we're going to do a barbecue on Friday, kind of make it a really fun experience for people. But that's going to be the longest class that I've taught to date and the most extensive class. We have over 1,000 slides, and really kind of trying to cover every last little thing that there is. And that'll also be available as an online course here in a couple of weeks after that in June. We'll be launching the online version of that, which I'm currently recording most of that as we speak. So yeah, we'll get that up as soon as we can. But lots of cool stuff I haven't taught before. I'm teaching with Olive Branch Aquaponics in Oklahoma. Both of us have actually worked on aquaponics facilities in Africa, so we both have some pretty unique experience when it comes to large-scale commercial aquaponics at the multi-acre scale. We've both worked on those types of facilities in Africa, so that's really cool to have that kind of co-teacher with And it's a guy that I've worked with for quite a few years in Oklahoma on different aquaponics and actually Texas as well. We've done some projects there on different aquaponic vegetable and food production facilities. So that's been really cool. I'm just excited about that. I just put a ton of work into updating all of it with the latest information there is in aquaponics. There's so much crappy information out there. And then we'll also condense that down into a short course as well. So there'll be like a cheap, hey, I know nothing. I'm interested in the backyard system kind of thing.
Yeah.
We'll have that available, but as a separate shorter course, it'll be a little bit cheaper. But for now, we're going to do the master class and then the in-person one, and then have a slightly longer version that'll be maybe an extra day or two long in length for the online course. That'll also be provided. And if you come to the in-person course in Oklahoma, you'll actually get the online course for free with that. So
busy. Like I said, now I like that you're going to condense that down for each one, right? So I'm sure, like you said, you could probably do 2,000 slides on this type of stuff. But to get the aquaponics application into the home growers' hands, I think that's the big one, man. That's a key that I think a lot of people would take advantage of if it was just a little bit more accessible,
Oh yeah, and I actually have a whole like aquarium aquaponics, like a 1 hour presentation on my YouTube channel. I don't remember exactly where it is, but it's on there somewhere. One of the podcast episodes, I think it was actually. I don't remember which one, but we did do a presentation on it at some point.
That's cool though, man. I do think that's really neat. That's where a lot of the magic lies. But speaking of home growers, can we talk for a second about this AI chatbot? And you've been working with it, but you're working with it from the back end. So you get a glimpse of something very, very interesting, basically a glimpse inside the mind of home growers and professional cultivators alike, I'm sure. But I guess what I'm asking is, what have you learned looking at the things that people engage with your AI chatbot with about? You know what I mean? Does that question make sense?
Sure. Yeah. We have a whole bunch of different cool stuff working on the AI. I've been doing a lot of the data compiling and then also like the making sure that the AI is answering people correctly. So going back and reading the conversations and making sure that the AI is doing it right, because we use that data to train the AI to be smarter each time. So
right.
And we have a whole new version we're working on training, so it'll be available offline as well. So you'll be able to download it. I'll have it on your phone, and you'll have the library, locally, so you won't have to have an internet connection if you don't need it. Don't want to do that, which is super cool. But
wow.
What we've been doing right now is in this beta phase, training the AI. It's been really, really interesting. We had someone try to scrape all the data from it, which we had some safety precautions in it that kind of prevented them from doing that. But it's interesting to see them try to make it give the answers that we didn't want it to give. That was funny.
Okay, which one of you was that? All right, knock that off. Someone would listen to one of your appearances on a show like mine. Tried to scrape the data. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, we knew it was going to happen. It's fine. Or some company. It could have been a company. It could have been just some...
Good call.
Some troll. Who knows? But it's been interesting. A lot of people asking, what's the best plants to grow in their particular area?
Sure.
That's not something that we had thought of in terms of data sets that it did a really good job answering, but it wasn't something that we had pre-built data for. So I thought that was really neat. And then also it's come up with some really cool answers, like the nutrient IPM or IMO. So it's making IMOs like IMO 3 and 4 using nutrient specific inputs for that to kind of get a final result that puts out faster nutrients.
Wow.
And that's the whole angle that is not anything Chris came up with, isn't anything that is traditional natural farming. It's just something AI was like, hey, why aren't we doing this? This makes sense.
Jeez.
So that was a really interesting kind of insight that you can kind of combine composting to a lesser extent with specific crops and get nutrient outputs, at least theoretically. And then we've tested some of them, but we haven't tested a whole wide range of them yet. But it is interesting to kind of see that. And it makes sense too, if you have that level of microbe concentration to rapidly make it bioavailable, and why wouldn't it? So it's been really interesting to kind of see how the AI digests the data on that. And then lots of hyper-specific plant disease problems that are diseases that are specific to individual plants or plant genuses. So that's been kind of something we weren't quite expecting as much. Some people being freakishly friendly with it, saying they love it, and how just like human affection towards the AI. It's been kind of funny.
I mean, it's a farming AI, right? It's not, that's the cool thing about collecting this data. It's not like you're tapping into their hopes and dreams here. There's nothing personal. It's you're learning about farming in specific locations. The first one you said made a lot of sense, what to grow in my area. I think garden planning is like a huge topic on people's minds, especially in polycropping outdoor scenarios. And it's overlooked. Garden planning is overlooked. A lot of people just kind of go by the seat of their pants. I love when I see members posting in our Discord, they have like graph paper and they have their garden drawn out. I think that's great. And something like your AI chatbot would certainly help with garden planning. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. And then people asking like how to do terrain work on their property. They live on a hillside and need to know what to do. Or people asking like what's the prevailing wind in their particular place, or just stuff that it's kind of interesting to kind of see if the AI can answer it or not, based on the data that they gave them. Because it doesn't have like a geotagging or anything. It doesn't know where you are when you connect to it unless you tell it. So
that's wild.
And that's intentional.
Yeah, nice.
But if you tell it where you are, it tries to give you good answers on that kind of stuff. This month it's this direction, this month it's this direction. It was kind of interesting to kind of see it answer some stuff that was not at all necessarily built into the AI data set. So
wow,
it was pretty cool on that. Just went through a bunch of these yesterday. I have about 300 more left I have to go through that are different sessions, but
that's really neat.
A lot of like what to do for aphids. So a lot of that.
Oh, aphids becoming a problem right now. I can see that. I mean, I'm sure aphids are a problem all the time, but don't you find, Steve, that when you help people, I was just talking to Mary Beth Sanchez about this. If you like consult with people or diagnose pests or issues, don't you feel like problems come in waves? I'm not sure if it's just a phenomena of like random things, obviously establishing random patterns, or if it's like, aphids are bad this year, right? That's a thing that happens too. But do you ever notice problems coming in waves?
Yeah, I mean, you have insect seasons, right? So like, in the spring here in the States, you're going to have lots of aphids and they're going to kick off. And then once it heats up a little bit more, like in later half of spring, early summer, then the whiteflies start to come out and become more of a problem.
True.
And then once the midsummer hits, then you got the grasshoppers and butterflies start to be a problem and caterpillars start to be a problem. So, you have different seasons for each of the insects and you start to think of it that way. You can kind of preemptively hit them a little bit more. I know in Jamaica, for instance, May is butterfly season. Like, legit, like there's just millions of them. It's crazy. They swarm the whole fucking island.
Yeah.
They'll hatch at once or whatever. It's pretty wild. I would imagine you're off in Hawaii. It's probably similar there. They have similar blooms.
Right now, Steve, it's I think it's only a couple of weeks out of the year. It's witch moth week. I don't know if you know these witch moths. They're in Jamaica. I just learned this on stream. They call them the duppy bat because they're the size of a bat. You mistake them for bats.
Oh, okay.
But it's the witch moth. And dude, you described it properly. It is a swarm. It's a swarm. Like you're driving. Remember the scene from Fear and Loathing when they're driving through the desert? It's like one of the first scenes. I think it's the opening scene where they're driving through the desert and they're tripping on acid. And then the car gets like attacked by a swarm of bats. That's what it's like here when the fucking witch moths are out, man. So you're right about the seasons with the pests. And I'd imagine that the AI bot would do a really good job with things like that, right?
Oh,
localized to areas. It's going to reflect that data. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's really peculiar about the witch moths.
Yeah, they're gnarly.
Do you know what a duppy is? A duppy is?
I don't.
A duppy is like a ghost in Jamaica. People blame problems on them or problems in their life on them. But kids will carry an odd number of pebbles, like 5 or 7 or 9 pebbles, because the duppies can only count to even numbers.
Wow.
And if it ends on an odd number, they stop and recount it again. So little kids will like throw the pebbles on the ground behind them and like run away. So the duppy will like
get confused and
keep counting the pebbles or the beans or whatever.
Dude, that's amazing.
Have like an OCD. I don't know. It's just like a weird Jamaican. Duppies aren't exclusive to Jamaica. They're across the Caribbean.
That's really cool, man, because the witch moth is supposed to be a sign of a dead ancestor visiting you. So that like all kind of makes sense. So what else has been on your mind with IPM since you've been digging into this chat and there's a lot of IPM questions? Just any general thoughts or learnings that you've had recently when it comes to pest management?
Lately, I've had a lot of people hit me up about root aphids And
Oosh.
a lot of people really struggle with those. They can rip through a huge facility and be like really hard to get down to zero if you don't know the right way to do it. But that they can be tricky. The best thing you want to do is knock them down with like a Bavaria Bassiana alternating with Iceria fumiceraceae to knock them back, and then do some root soaks, and then hit the roots themselves with Metarhizium amisophile, which is really, really awesome for termites and ants, but also particularly it's good for soil dwelling insects. So it also will hit the root aphids as well.
I have not heard of that last biological. Is there a brand name for that one?
There used to be a product called Met 52, but that got taken off the market, and there's 2 or 3 new products of the same biological agent. It's called Metarhizium. It's not as used as often in the US, but it is a good one to have. So if you have Iceria fumiceraceae, Metarhizium, and Bavaria Bassiana, you're going to be able to smash down most insect outbreaks with a rotation of that.
Wow.
But you're going to have, for root aphids, you got to do a good root drench and spray the foliar to make sure you get them down all the way.
Yeah, that's what I've realized too, is the root aphids, when they take hold, it's hard to get them down to zero, as you say, especially if people don't want to dispose of their medium and let their garden kind of lay fallow, right? Like if you're in a grow room and you can just shut down your grow for a few weeks, swap out the medium, that's one thing. But if you're, I don't know, in living soil beds that you've had for years and years and years, it's a totally different scenario, man. It's sad.
The other bit of it is, and this is where I seem to see it the most, people will have like a greenhouse facility, a grow facility with air intakes that are like capable of ingesting insects and passing them through. Like they don't have enough screening on it or whatever.
Right.
And they'll be like right next to a pond or some other water area. And in North America, in the South, they love living in the marshes and anywhere where there's water around ponds and the reeds. There's also a freshwater, it's called like a water lily aphid or something like that. It looks very similar, and they can live really well in the same kind of environment as rice root aphids. So they're another one to keep an eye out for. But yeah, a lot of times I see them and it's like I go outside to their pond and I can find them right on the reeds. And it's like, oh, well, there's where they came from.
Oof.
I've done that 5 or 6 times.
That's brutal, man. And you're right. That's the first one of the big takeaways from this episode. If you don't have a filtration on your intake, especially if you're drawing in air from the outside, it's a great way to pull cool air in certain climates. But don't just leave that ducting open. Or Steve, like you said, have like that, I don't know if I would call it chicken wire, but like that exterior kind of filter screen that would still totally suck in a spider mite or a rice root aphid or anything like that. Get like what? Like a furnace filter and metal tape that bitch on? Get something like that.
Your best bet is just to get build a little wooden frame, like a box frame out of wood, like 1x1s or 1x2s, and then put thrip screening on it and make it, much bigger than the intake. This way you have more surface area, so you're not like clogging the crap out of the filter.
That's smart.
But make like a 3x3 or a 4x4, square box and just thrip screen over it, and then put that up against the wall, and that'll get rid of most of the stuff. You might want to stop thrips, or if you have airborne mites or something like that, like happens sometimes, and then you're stuck with that. But otherwise, it's going to stop most other things.
And just pulling in crap too, debris and bullshit. That is a good point. I see a lot of negligence on the intake. I've been guilty of that myself. So very, very good point. And yeah, man, it's just a constant battle. It's just, when they get into your grow, when you're set up, it can be a real pain. What does that look like in aquaponic grows? When you get an infestation, you're growing in like a dual root zone system, so there's not a whole lot of media, right?
Well, they'll live down. I got videos of them on my YouTube channel. I have a video of a cilantro NFT tray that has more biomass and aphids than it does roots. It's insane.
Whoa.
Yeah. So in an aquaponics, the rice root aphids and the water lily aphids really will take off even worse than in just soil pots. So we have to really treat them. And again, using the biocontrols like Metarhizium and things like that, I don't have to worry about killing my fish or shrimp or anything else in the system. Although Metarhizium sometimes can kill shrimp, like the little tiny ones, like copepods, but it doesn't kill off like your food production shrimp or anything like that.
Oh man, I have questions about shrimp and fish. I'll save it until later in the episode. But yeah, that's interesting, man, and that's why I like talking to you. You're definitely a guy who's up to date on the biological products. That's what everybody wants now. It's the days of pylon and avermectin are kind of waning, if not over, and now people want these biological applications. They just do. So yeah, it's good to see you in the world of IPM, and it's cool that you're kind of getting these unique insights through the AI that you probably wouldn't be able to, quite understand from that perspective without digging through that data set. Very cool, man. Good luck with your 300 other sessions to paw through, and good luck finding the hacker too. Keep us up to date on the hacker.
Hacker search.
Real quick before we get into what I really want to talk about this episode, which is get back to aquaponics and aquatic microbes and stuff, the real stuff that you're an expert at. Let's talk about this Thai seed drop for a second. You, of course, teamed up with Growcast Seed Co. earlier this year, pretty recently for a Thai seed drop, and they're back. You've got another round of Thai seeds. This time, people got to DM you directly at Aquaponics. Which strains do you have available? And tell me about them. Are they all Thai? Are they crosses? Fill me in here.
First, we have the F2s of the temple Thai, so basically the children of the last release, more pheno hunted, and this one's more peachy and more banana. There's much more banana in this drop than there was on the last round. So that's really cool in terms of genetics, the differences between this round and the last round with the temple Thai, which get up to 20, 25 feet tall. The ones that we got the mother stock, I think the shortest one that we got the mother stock from was 18 feet tall. The tallest one was like 23 feet. And there was ones there that were still growing that were not down yet that were taller than any of the ones that we saw. So, or any of the ones that we had got seeds from at least. So they're monsters. So if you're looking for something cool, and they finish in time. We actually grew them in California this last year and managed to harvest them without any frost damage or anything like that. It wasn't a colder part of California. So yeah, they did just fine. So you should be able to pull them off. And, the majority of the U.S., Michigan might not pull it off, but anybody in the 2/3 of the U.S., southern 2/3 of the U.S. should do just fine.
Nice, man.
We have the Sweet Temple Thai, which is a coffee strain that we found, or has coffee in it most of the time, but not all the time, on the Sweet Temple Thai. Or the Sweet Thai, and then we crossed that with the Temple Thai, so it's got some of the lemon, coffee herbs in it, terpenes wise. So it'll be interesting to kind of see the breakdown on, and it gets much a little bit stockier, not quite so tall.
Nice. So those will be great if you're looking for something unique outdoor this season. Still got time. Hit them up right now at Aquaponics and get those for the outdoor season.
And then we got Buddha Sugar, which is a sugar cane crossed with Temple Thai, and then the Low High, which we released as well in the last release.
Nice. Yeah, those low highs, the landrace on landrace ones. Very cool, man.
Yep.
People like the exotic genetics, bringing them in. So this time you hit up at Aquaponics, DM him, maybe you got him on Discord or something like that. Definitely on Instagram. Give him a follow if you're just now discovering this show. How's it going? Hit subscribe. And yeah, dude, I'm excited to see what comes out of those. I got to get back to the mainland so I can get some more plants going. Limited time sale at sustainablevillage.com. That's right. Code GROWCAST gets you 10% off all Blue Mat watering systems. Now is your last chance. The Blue Mat code GROWCAST is going to end here at the end of the month. So go ahead and go to sustainablevillage.com and get the best watering system that you can plug into your beds. You will absolutely love the Blue Mats. These things do not need a pump to operate. You can have a gravity-fed system. They automatically detect the pressure in your soil. And once the pressure or moisture gets low enough, it emits just enough water to get you back in the target range. Never worry about going out of town for a weekend again. Grab the best of the best, sustainablevillage.com, code GROWCAST, 10% off. Like I said, this is a limited time code, and they only do it for us, maybe a couple times a year. You can't find a Sustainable Village discount code out there otherwise, so it's a really, really big treat that the folks at Sustainable Village put on for us. So thank you to Michael Box. And if you guys want the best system, whether you're in cocoa, living soil, if you're in big beds, if you're in pots, it doesn't matter. Give them a call, shoot them an email. They'll give you a quote. They'll design the system for you for free, and then mention GROWCAST for 10% off your total when it comes to the Blue Mat products at sustainablevillage.com. So one more time, thank you to Sustainable Village. Thank you to Michael Box. Code GROWCAST, 10% off Blue Mat only for the rest of the month. Only a few days left. Go and grab it. Sustainablevillage.com, code GROWCAST. Thank you, Sustainable Village. All right, man, let's talk fish. I realize that we've done a lot of episodes together, and it's been a minute since we've covered aquatic microbes and fish, and now you doing this extensive aquaponics masterclass is like the perfect time to kind of revisit this stuff, follow up on some of this stuff, and dig deeper. One thing that you said that always stuck with me, and I tell this to people all the time, man, when I'm talking to new growers and maybe I realize that someone's like a little further along than I expected, and I want to give them a piece of advice that'll help their grow that they haven't heard yet. You talk about aquatic microbes versus terrestrial microbes, and you talk about how a lot of people are missing out on like a huge portion of the soil food web, and how naturally these aquatic microbes do find their way onto terrestrial land. So like you want to include them in your garden, and if you're not including them in your garden, they're not there. You're not getting the benefits of them, you know? I think you mentioned a figure that a study showed that something like 80% of living aquatic microbes can survive in living soil as well. Like very few are lost in that translation. I would just like you to speak on, again, however you see fit now, you know, with your current understandings and learnings, what type of benefits do these aquatic microbes bring? What are these microbes specifically, some of your favorite that we're missing from the dirt microbes, and just talk about the that these water organisms can bring to your garden.
Yeah, so there's quite a few different, it's not quite 80%, but it's closer to 70%, but it's a huge percentage of the microbes that can survive in your soil system long enough to do mineralization. So you have quite a bit more diversity. In fact, there was a study done by the Aquaponics Association when the soil growers people tried to make us illegal. Not illegal, but they wanted to get rid of organic certification for aquaponics and say, oh, it's not soil, so it's not organic, which is ridiculous, because when we did a microbe test, we tested with a bunch of different organic soil farms, soil from their main production space where they're producing crops, and then we tested the same exact thing for many, many different aquaponics facilities. What we found was that the aquaponics facilities, on average, had 168% more biodiversity in their aquaponic water than the soil did.
Jeez.
In terms of total species.
And that doesn't even include the dual root zone style, which really incorporates both.
Exactly. Yep.
That is really interesting.
So that was a really big takeaway, that there was a huge amount of things. And, you know, I'm sure you've had many other guests talk on the show, but, you know, that activating those immune system genes really is the key to increasing flavor compounds in your cannabis, right? So if you're not activating those, then you're not creating those secondary metabolites for the crops, you know, to really take off and do stuff with. So by having the plants have access to that, you know, from even an aquarium water or aquaponics, or even just taking stuff from your local pond and putting it in there that has that, you know, separate biodiversity, is really going to help trigger those immune system response genes on your crops and boost your terpene levels to those, you know, 4, 5, 6% levels that you see, you know, in some of the more professional grows. They're getting that by hitting those high numbers of microbial diversity. They're not adding some magic, you know, store-bought shit. They're not looking at the moon schedule and, you know, putting crystals in there and, you know, trying to change the political affiliation of their water with, you know, structured bullshit. Actually, they're, you know, increasing the biodiversity of the microbes. That's why you see natural farming people having really high numbers, and people with really good composted soil having really high numbers for their terpenes and their cannabinoids, is because, well, they have the diversity in the root system in order to actually turn those genes on in the plant, that the plant thinks it needs to defend itself against X, Y, or Z, and then, you know, turn those genes on, and then, you know, that's going to activate the secondary compound production, which we enjoy as terpenes or cannabinoids. And cannabinoids are just a category of terpenes. So,
and that also nods to all the salt growers who go like synganic, you know, the synganic style that almost every bottled nutrient grower is employing now. I feel like every modern grower has a microbe part now. It's crazy, man. Yep. But I think the aquatic thing specifically, it's like, that's the one change that a lot of people could make in their garden that, like you said, would instantly open up their biodiversity. Is it mostly bacteria that we're missing out on by not applying some source of, or is it just a consortium? Is it about everything like the algae and other types of microbes in there? What do you think?
It's definitely a higher percentage of bacteria rather, but you also have archaea, and then you have just all the other microbes that are in there. But there's
Random shit.
definitely fewer. Yeah, there's definitely protists and amoebas and all those other ones that make up the food web. And really, what the reason why it's so good is that you're filling in any missing niches that you don't have populated, right? That's why adding IMO, liquid IMO in particular, to an aquaponics system increases your mineralization, increases bioavailable nutrients. Isn't because that the microbes are like have minerals in them. They're just converting the fish waste into more usable plant forms rather than just
Right.
Whatever.
So it works both ways. That's really cool. You're taking limo and putting it in your aquaponic water. That's really cool. It kind of, makes sense. The land benefiting the sea and the sea benefiting the land.
Yeah. We dose IMO 1 week, and then the next week we dose labs. And we just alternate those two. You could just do IMO each week, but that really helps radically clean up the aquaponic systems and helps a lot with food safety as well. So we did a couple of different experiments where we've treated different aquaponics facilities that there's a type of E. coli that shows up in aquaculture systems. It's not human pathogenic, but it causes false positives for the ones that are.
Oh.
So you have to send it out for secondary testing. It's kind of like aspergillus testing in cannabis, where it's easy to get a false positive through both Bacillus amphicoliensis use or other methods. So if you actually test what's in it versus like total bacteria count or whatever, or bacteria colony forming units, if you test total colony forming units, you might fail. But if you actually just test the species for themselves,
right,
you realize that there's no problem. So we've treated multiple facilities for that type of E. coli within 30 days without bringing the system offline, which no one else has done ever with lactobacillus. We've also have evidence that it works on listeria and salmonella as well.
Jeez.
Through some early testing. So in my opinion, you should be dosing labs, in any type of food production facility. If it's liquid, like if it's hydro or aquaponics, you should be dosing labs for food safety, like just as a food safety standpoint, so that if there is a contamination issue, like a mouse falls in or something, it doesn't contaminate the system.
I think that's a great practice for, like you said, just about any grower, home grower, garden grower, cannabis grower, vegetable grower. Labs are wildly underutilized and overlooked. I am guilty of that as well. So that's another good takeaway here. Get those labs bumping, and those super labs, of course. I think we talked about that on the last episode. Go check out that episode about the super labs. But you mentioned something I want to ask you, Steve. You said, add some aquarium water, even add some water from the pond, you said. What are your thoughts on adding aquarium water? What types can and can't we do? Is it just a free-for-all? Do you have do's and don'ts for adding this type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely don't add it from like your African cichlid tank. The pH is like 8, so the plants are going to not be very happy. That would be a big one to avoid. Another one would be, make sure that if you're in flower, I don't know if I would use aquarium fish water because it's high in nitrogen, right? So after like week 2 or 3 of flower, I wouldn't be putting that in there anymore. It already has enough nitrogen. You don't need to give it more nitrogen. It's going to stretch. So keep in mind that there is quite a bit of, the nitrates are much more bioavailable than ammonia is for the plant as far as instant uptake. And, the plant is, yes, it has to convert it, but it loves to uptake the nitrates really, really, really readily. So, be mindful of that when you're watering it in, because it'll definitely be a problem if you're dosing it heavily.
So add it in veg. You want to inoculate early anyways, right? So add it when it's young.
Yep.
Is your advice.
Absolutely. Yep. So that would be the caveats for that, or just dilute it, right? So like use it as like a quarter of your water if you're dosing it in flower.
Sure.
So it can provide some nitrogen, but you're not getting like, 80 or 100 ppm. Because usually when you do a water change in the aquarium, you're sucking all that waste out of the bottom. So you're getting like a higher level than what the water column is in terms of nitrogen.
Well, what about ponds and creeks and stuff like that? How do we know if it's safe to add that type of thing to our soil?
Sure. So with ponds, obviously you're going to want to have a source where they're not spraying any kind of weird, stuff around it. So make sure it's a clean, good source, or a lake. But again, you're just trying to get like the the different mineralizing microbes. So make sure that you're getting it from right near where you have a bunch of live plants growing in aquatic plants. That's really where you want to get it from, because you can even collect the aquatic plants and put them in a blender and pour them on, and have all those microbes that are on the surface of it, right?
Ooh, I like
And you
that.
can brew them up. Yeah, one of the methods we teach for liquid IMO collection, we teach a couple different methods, but one of them is just collecting aquatic plants and then more or less just blending and brewing them, and it works quite well.
That's cool. I hadn't thought of that. You're after the bacteria that is forming with the plants kind of at that shoreline. That makes perfect sense. So why not just take the plants themselves and there's your inoculant right there. They've already done the work for you in gathering it. That's interesting because I was thinking about, yeah, probably different than like scooping a cup from the middle of the lake. Would certainly still have stuff, but yeah, very interesting. Very super, super interesting. Why always tilapia then, Steve? Like, why is every aquaponics set up tilapia? Is there something magic about tilapia that they fucking poop plant fertilizer?
So tilapia are just used a lot because if the power goes out, the tilapia can more or less breathe atmospheric air most of the time. For quite a while, they can survive in extremely low oxygen environments. So if you're a newer person or you're a larger facility and you have problems with electrical for whatever reason, your generator has a problem, you're not going to immediately lose all your fish. Another reason why is they're easy to breed. They're mouth brooders, right? So they're going to have their babies hold on to them until they're, big enough to swim in their mouth. And then once they do that, then they'll release them. And then they're easy to just put some floating plastic plants or, a couple of milk crates or something else in there that the babies can kind of get away from the adults and not be food. So they're easy to kind of buy one time and raise over and
Jeez.
over again. So those are kind of the biggest advantages. In terms of plate price, they're really crappy. I mean, they're $2 to $4 per fish, so they're not really great for compared to other options. But in terms of like just ease of growing something that you can eat, you can also grow them out in about 12 to 14 months most of the time. So they're fairly quick turnover in terms of fish species.
Man,
Pacu are about the only thing that grow quicker than them. Pacu will get it to plate size in 8 months.
man, that is wild. Well, you just totally answered my question. The low oxygen thing makes perfect sense. That's like basically insurance for your fish generator for your grow. You mentioned earlier, though, like there being a kind of technical definition for an aquaponics grow that some percentage of the minerals that the plants consume has to come from the fish, because you always got to supplement a little bit, right? Can you talk about that?
Sure. So yeah, I mean there is no like official aquaponics definition. They tried to define one. The associations tried to a couple times, but more or less, it's are you getting 75% or more of your nutrients, from your fish waste or from a recirculating fish system. There's lots of stuff that isn't aquaponics. You see the people in sand beds and stuff like that. That's not aquaponics. It's not food safe. That's just a disaster piece. Never do that. It's just don't ever it's crap. They claim that it makes minerals on its own that aren't in fish food. It just magically creates them from thin air and all kinds of other ridiculous crap. So it really is a dead end technology, and it gives aquaponics a bad name. But you also have people just doing like wicking beds and SIP systems in aquaponics and having really good results. The biggest facility right now is actually just merged with the German cannabis company to become the first multi-country aquaponic cannabis facility that I actually did some work with in the past. Aquilitas up in Canada. I'm good friends with Danielle Matland. She runs a lot of their stuff up there on the fish side. They actually run soil, living soil that's fed aquaculture water with a recirculating tray underneath, and any runoff goes back to the fish tank. So a lot of people are using hybrid systems, and a lot of the bigger actually all the bigger commercial facilities at this point are using some type of hybrid of soil and aquaponics, dual root zone or wicking bed. There's one or two others that aren't, but they're having to pheno hunt so much that it just, to me, makes no commercial viable sense. Like, yeah, you could pheno hunt 1,000 strains and find one that's going to produce in DWC only, but why though? Like, just save yourself the work and just add the soil layer and grow any strain of the month that's popular right now and make money. It just makes no sense from an economic standpoint to like put that much work into it to like prove a point. I don't know. It just seems stupid, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I'm a little bit biased. you took me on a trip to go see Vertica Farms. Shout out to Vertica Farms, okay, out there in Oklahoma. And I'm biased because of how just beautiful that system works, man. When it's applied to scale, they had their veg room going. The veg room looked gorgeous. They had the same canal of like fish feed flowing through all these plants. In the veg room, they had autos going because you have like extra space there. So they had a bunch of beautiful autos. They had the flower rooms that looked perfect. Then they had the lettuce production and stuff. It's a very impressive system, man. We support all growing types here. That's what we've always talked about at Growcast is, there's a million ways to do it. We want to support people no matter what. But if I had to say, like you made the ultimate argument, Steve, which is, a lot of grow systems can produce all sorts of fire, but this is the only one that produces protein. I just think it's so cool. I think it's so unique. And there's a really good argument for it being, quote, the best grow style because it does produce protein, man. It fixes hunger and it's just really cool to see it in action. So thank you for taking me on that tour. And I agree. I think that it is a system that makes way more sense objectively than a lot of systems. Although we encourage people to grow how they want, this is a really sensible system. I love it.
Yeah, it's I don't know. You can do more stuff with aquaponics than you can with just about anything else. Like you're using significantly less water. You use 0.3 to 1% of the system volume per day is what gets consumed by the plants for evaporation, which ends up being about 17 to 18% of the water you would use for soil in terms of a month to month or run to run total water volume. So, a place like Malachi in Hawaii or wherever else is going to be, a great advantage to a place like that. I had a grower in Barbados that was growing in the legal market down there. And he, again, it's another one where they have no groundwater there, right? It's all rain only. So they have so much water and then the water's out and then there's no more water. So if you have a place like that, having a system that's recirculating, that's using, way less water is really going to be a huge advantage to you, and food production. When I was in Africa too, they have very seasonal rains. Well, we can store all the water, when it's there, but in the dry season, if we burn through all that, we're fucked. So it's the same kind of deal where we're much, much more able to grow significantly larger volumes of crops off that same volume of water. So that's one advantage. And then, hey, too, in an apocalypse situation, should it's the fan, drink the water out of the system. Like it's not that like even a little light filtration or even no filtration, you can still drink the water. Like
when I used
to teach at the facility in California, I used to drink a glass of the water just to prove to the students it wasn't toxic. Like
that's cool.
Same thing I do when I do teach anything KNF. We always have a liquid IMO, and we have everybody drink it if they want to drink it. So just to show people, like, look, you can make inputs that can kill bugs or make your plants super strong that are drinkable. You don't have to rely on weird chemical shit.
That's so cool, man. Yeah, that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And like closing the loop means a lot of different things. But when you take a look at aquaponics, you see a different type of loop. It's just so cool and so self-sustaining. I want to ask about something that we teased earlier in the episode, though. You say there's all these different benefits and drawbacks to raising different types of fish to feed your aquaponic garden. And you mentioned the tilapia being, $2 to $4 a plate. But can you raise shrimp? Can you raise lobsters to where like you're selling this meat and making a profit off of the meat and making a profit off of the crops? What about raising our favorite edible fish or crustaceans for aquaponics?
Yeah, so there's quite a few things in terms of like the craziest one I've seen. There's a group and I know the guy that worked on most of it in terms of putting it together. His name is Paul Brown, really great dude at UC Davis. He's a good friend of mine. He was doing abalone and sea urchins and seaweed. So they grow seaweed to feed the invasive urchins that are like overpopulated because we back in the day, we killed off all the sea otters, right? Because they wanted the fur from them back in the 1800s, early 1900s. And then they put a moratorium on the sea lion and the sea otter. I think it's the sea otters. I'm sorry, not the sea lion, sea otters. They would basically be the control agent for the urchins because they're one of the few things that can eat them.
Right.
We killed all those, right? So the urchins are going crazy and wiping out the kelp beds on the West Coast. So that's kind of a problem. And then the urchins also are kind of half starving, so they don't have any roe. So they're not very good for like sushi production or export. So what they do is they go and collect a bunch of the urchins from the ocean, and they collect a bunch of abalone, like the young baby abalones, or breed the abalone. I'm not quite sure the acquisition of the abalone, raise them up in captivity and grow them out. And then the waste stream from those two feeds the algae. And then the algae they use to feed the other two. So it's like a loop on that. And then they
Jeez.
can basically bulk out the urchins from the ocean and have them get the roe in them so they can sell them for like food production, sushi and whatever else. So
That's like a sushi roll all in one. You have the seaweed, you got the fish, and you got the sea urchin.
yeah. So that's the craziest one that I've seen in terms of like most unique. There's another one that sticks out in my head. There was a group there in Colorado, like near Pueblo, Colorado, and they have an alligator farm, and they raise alligators, and the alligator poop goes to a giant lettuce facility. The water gets filtered and separated and mineralized from the alligator poop.
Whoa.
Because it's not still nitrogen basically at the end of the day. And then that feeds the lettuce, and the lettuce feeds the chickens, and the chickens feed the gators.
Ah!
So that's a more interesting food chain in terms of aquaponic systems, but it's I guess the highest trophic level.
Good Lord. That is the talk about closing the loop. The chicken feeds the gator. Were they harvesting the gators? Were they eating the gator meat?
Yeah, it's a gator farm, so you get meat and leather.
Whoa.
I think they're like the farthest northern gator farm in the States, at least in terms of latitude.
Gator meat ain't bad. Gator meat surprisingly ain't bad. So, I mean, listen.
Gator tail is great, man.
Yeah, I'll try anything
Especially
once.
if you slow cook it.
Maybe twice. This was good stuff, man. I mean, we have a few more minutes here. I guess the last thing I'd like to ask you is if I was looking to get into this, maybe at a home scale, I take the master class, I learn the steps to get started, and I'm going to do this for my first time. What are the top or most common mistakes you see people making that I should avoid when it comes to caring for fish?
One, not paying attention to like the water temperature and like trying to do some amount of sun shading. Same way you would in a greenhouse, right? You're going to put shade cloth or whatever. Like you kind of need to do that for any open water areas or the fish tank, or, don't have the plumbing directly exposed to the sun if you're trying to keep it cool kind of thing. And that's a big problem I see in a lot of the country. Next would be just the assumption that it doesn't make nutrients. It absolutely needs nutrients. Your iron gets oxidized. Your manganese is going to get oxidized. Your potassium is going to get stripped out. Molybdenum is going to get stripped out pretty quickly. Remember that aquaponics uses more molybdenum than normal soil does because it has to convert the nitrates back to ammonia. And to do that, it needs molybdenum to do that chemical process.
Whoa.
So it will actually strip it out faster. It's why a lot of aquaponic systems, in fact, almost every commercial aquaponic system I've ever tested has been deficient in molybdenum. I can't think of a single one that was actually dosing it appropriately.
That's wild.
That'll prevent your like purples from turning purple and cannabis, but also prevent like your red saleless lettuce, if you're growing lettuce, from being red or bright red, which can affect the market value. So these are, stuff that I've figured out and tested across many different crops. You know what I mean?
That's really interesting because molybdenum needed in such low amounts in a soil grow.
Yeah, it's one of the interesting things and why I know so much about individual nutrients with crops is that I've grown 200, 300 different types of crops with a set nutrient range and then looked at, okay, here's the exact ppms for every single nutrient in the system because that's how we test it. Any commercial system that I'm managing, we test either monthly or twice a month. We have a service with True Aquaponics where we actually currently manage about 400,000 gallons of aquaponics facilities across the country on a monthly basis where they test the water. They send us the results. We send them custom nutrient packets with dates that just rip it open and pour it in, and it rebalances the nutrients, in a way that keeps everything balanced and safe and the production high. And we've been doing that since 2018 and had a lot of, happy customers with that. So it's definitely, I don't know, it's given me a lot of insight into why plants do certain things and then also like deficiencies, how they affect the crops in different ways because I've seen them. Okay, this is what happens in cannabis, but here's what happens in squash, and here's what's happened in basil when you don't have enough molybdenum. You know what I mean?
True. It just gives you a deeper understanding. That's very true, dude.
On the nutrient side is just you talked about closing the loops. It's one of the things that we have with the AI that we're going to be releasing in April or May. I'm trying to have it ready for the pub. Well, I'm going to beta display it off and demo it at the Aquaponics Association virtual conference in April. We'll release it to the public in May once we've done a little bit more fine tuning on it. But basically, we take all of the awesome natural farming stuff that we showed you in the previous episode when I was on there, but it's also overlaid with fish toxicity when it parses for the right crops, right? So it will give you nutrient solutions for aquaponics for increasing calcium or potassium or whatever using liquid plant input that you make yourself and account for fish toxicity so that you don't have crops that, kill your plants. Now, there might be crops in there that no one's ever tested that will end up killing fish. I can't, if no one's ever tried it, then I can't know. But I think based on genus and chemical makeup, we can do a pretty good job at, getting rid of 99% of the ones that will kill fish. So that's a current project that'll be, demoed in April and shown off in May to the public. And we'll have the first free version out, hopefully by the end of the month for the AI. If not, it'll be by 4/20. That's kind of our last date that we're going to release it, if it's not before then. And lots of cool new features. We're on version 3 now of the AI on the back end. Public has access to version 1 and 2 if you currently are a paid supporter. If not, like I said, the first free version will be available here shortly.
Where do they go?
Go to Copyleft Cultivars on Patreon if you want to sign up to become part of that. And if you want to find out more about Copyleft Cultivars, you can find out about them at copyleftcultivars.com. And the masterclass as well, you can find out at aquaponicmasterclass.com. No S, aquaponic with a C, not plural. So, aquaponicmasterclass.com to find out more information about the event in Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's right. And then at Potent Ponics, POTENTPONICS at Potent Ponics on Instagram is where you can give the man a follow. Steve, we'll let you go. You got a lot on your plate, man. I always love rapping with you. Really, really great job as usual. Go give him a follow, everybody. Hit him up for the Thai seed drop. Check out the AI. Follow one of the more interesting people in the cannabis space. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you taking the time today, man.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested in aquaponics, I got a ton of info over my YouTube channel, Potent Ponics. They have a whole podcast on it, especially the first 20 episodes. And then there's 3 aquaponic cannabis conferences that I hosted myself that have 24 or more hours of education on each one for you to learn. I think we did like 36 hours in the last one or something insane. I forget what it was, but there's quite a few experts on there that are not myself as well that you can learn about aquaponics if you're tickled by this conversation.
Go check it out, everybody. Give them a subscribe. YouTube, Instagram, give them a follow. You know what to do. That's all for today. This has been Growcast. Thank you, dear listener, for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you. GrowcastPodcast.com for all the things. Get on the green list. That's our free email list. That's where you want to go. That's what you want to do. And we'll see you next time, everybody. This is Steve, Potent Ponics, and Jordan River Growcast signing off saying be safe out there, everybody, and grow smarter. That's our show, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Go and check out membership. I know you want to. GrowcastPodcast.com/membership will bring you right there. It's the greatest community in cannabis. The show never stops, everybody. We are moving and grooving 24/7 with bonus content, giveaways. I'm in the Discord personally. Come and smoke and hang out with me and Wolfman and Mary Beth. We're all there. We're all waiting for you. The members-only discounts will save you your membership fees back and then some. You can find it at growcastpodcast.com/membership. I hope to see you there, everybody. Special thank you to the members. Got some big stuff planned. It's going to knock your socks off. I'm going to do you proud this year, like we always do at Team Growcast. So huge shout out to the members, but I appreciate everyone just for tuning in to this podcast. So make sure to check it out. The website is growcastpodcast.com. There's some good free stuff up there as well. We got some resources, a couple of articles, and the green list. Every single week I shoot out an awesome article and it's free. So hop on the green list at growcastpodcast.com. Thank you, everybody, for lending me your ears. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves out there. Be safe. Love each other. See you later, everyone. Bye-bye.